On today's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast, it is congratulations to the 2023-24 Premier League champions, Manchester City, as Arsenal and Liverpool have bottled the title race this weekend, or so they say. I myself, as an Arsenal fan, am very salty. My co-host Mev, as a Liverpool fan, is also very salty, but fear not, we will still be looking at all of the weekend's Premier League action, with statistical analysis and tactical breakdown of Villa's 2-0 victory over Arsenal, Palace's 1-0 victory over Liverpool, and Man City's 5-1 rout of Luton Town. There were also some other games this weekend, apparently, including Newcastle's 4-0 thrashing of Spurs and Man United dropping further points away at Bournemouth. And as always on the Football Fellowship podcast, stick around towards the end of the episode for some more rounds of Football Tenable, the head-to-head quiz between myself and Mev, where you can play along at home as well.
Good evening to you, Toby. And if there was a week for you to be skiving off, it probably wasn't last week. You probably were better off not appearing on this week's episode, as it was Arsenal 0, Aston Villa 2, and now Aston Villa have done the double over Arsenal this season, with former manager Unai Emery at the helm. And let's be honest, let's give Aston Villa a bit of credit. We all thought that they could have absolutely gone to the Emirates and got a win, or at least at the very minimum, at least got a draw. But they got all 3 points and dented a huge blow to Arsenal's title challenge. And I guess it's all the more disappointing considering the fact that, obviously, bit of a spoiler alert, Manchester City did win on the day before against Luton Town. So what was your initial reaction to the loss against Aston Villa, and what do you think this means for your title challenge?
Yeah, as you said with Aston Villa, this was one of the games that was always highlighted in our schedules for the run-in at the end of the season. It's looking at Aston Villa, Spurs and United, I think, were the 3 that really stood out in our remaining fixtures. And we knew this was going to be a tough game. And when it came round to it at full time, it was a really, really sort of poor atmosphere. It was really, really disappointing as well to see this weekend how many Arsenal fans left the stadium when that second goal went in. I think our atmosphere and what the fans have brought to the stadium this year and last year has been such a massive jump up of what we've seen over sort of the decade before, where the Emirates was really sort of joked as a library and as a really quiet atmosphere, but it seems to have jumped up massively. And then this one game, it's only one game, it's only one loss, and it seems the fan base has gone into absolute delirium, leaving the stadium early, booing the players off at full time, and it was really, really disappointing to see, considering it was only one loss and how well we've played all calendar year so far. I understand, obviously, when you're coming up against Man City, you can't be dropping many points in the title race, but it's not over yet. We're still playing really, really well. We've still had a fantastic season, and it just felt a bit disappointing, I think, to see that sort of reaction from the fans immediately after the game. That's probably what hit me most, I think, as opposed to sort of the implication for the rest of the actual sort of league table and season, really.
Yeah, I can completely agree with your point, actually, because I did think also it was quite disappointing. Arsenal have had a fantastic atmosphere at the Emirates so far this season, and I think it's actually been the fan base that have really helped carry the side, especially in the early parts of the season when they necessarily weren't smashing teams, still getting the 3 points, but necessarily needed a little bit of help to get them through in the final stages of games. But let me stick with you, Toby, and ask you about the lineups themselves, because obviously you had that massive tie against Bayern Munich in midweek, which you drew 2-2. Probably, in my opinion, played your strongest side in that game. So for this one against Aston Villa, obviously it's a tough game, obviously it's a tough opponent, but at this late stage of the season, you might have to rotate, and Arteta did exactly that. He brought in Gabriel Jesus, Leandro Trossard, and Alexander Zinchenko for the likes of Kivior, Jorginho, and Martinelli, which then meant that Declan Rice moved further back into the 6, and then Kai Havertz dropped from the false 9 into the left-sided number 8 position. Do you think that Arteta was right to make as many changes as he did in terms of personnel, and then subsequently, as a result, that also meant that some of the players had to change in their positions on the pitch, even though there might not necessarily be a change of personnel? Let's say, yes, it is 3 changes in personnel, but more changes in terms of lineup. Do you think that was the right decision, or do you think at this stage you just have to rotate?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think the notion of rotating and changing those players, it was going to happen considering how many fixtures we do have at the moment. But I think it was the nature of the changes and how they didn't quite feel right in terms of the opponent we were coming up against. Villa are really known for having that high line, and to not see Martinelli starting, I think was really, really strange, especially coming up against most likely, and it was Ezri Konsa, who is normally a centre-back. He isn't the quickest. He's a fantastic player and a fantastic fullback, and he has been this season, but he's not the quickest, and Martinelli getting in those spaces behind and running on is something that he excels at. So I was really surprised not to see Martinelli playing on the left wing and seeing Trossard, again, someone who's had a good season, but someone who maybe plays a bit better against low blocks, plays a bit better where he's sort of dropping in and picking up the ball a little bit more. The same thing, I think, for Havertz, dropping him back into midfield when he's been playing so well up front, coming up against not the tallest centre-back partnership in Diego Carlos and Pau Torres, someone he could probably dominate aerially. And it ultimately being him playing in that left side of eight, he was the player sort of latching onto those balls, trying to get past Villa's high line. And he did a few times, but again, he just wasn't the right player in those positions to be doing that. So it was really frustrating, I think, because I think on another day, those changes would have worked against another opposition. It just felt like in this game, maybe not the right people to come up against Villa, especially in that second half. In the first half, I think we played really, really well, and there was some good highlights from players. But in that second half, I think it just fell apart, and I think a lot of that was dependent on who was playing and where.
Yeah, and on that first half, because there were positives for Arsenal in this game. It wasn't just the fact that they lost and it's the end of the world. In that first half, I think Arsenal were very much the better side in that game. And I do have to say, I think Arsenal were probably makers of their own downfall in the fact that they didn't take their chances. Yes, it's a game of fine margins. Yes, you're playing a quality opposition. But when you're on top, if you don't score, then you do have to worry that, you're letting the other opposition stay in the game. And the longer that they're in the game, the more chance they have of giving you a sucker punch. Because I thought Trossard had the chance, which the ball came from across the box. And looking back on it, I do think, yes, it was unlucky that Trossard didn't score, and there's a world-class save by Martinez, but in that position, you do expect the forward player to score. I think the fact that I think Saka also had a chance, I think Jesus also had a chance. There were several chances in that first half, and I just thought to myself, this could come back to bite Arsenal, but just because it could come back doesn't necessarily mean it will, and I think Arsenal this season have done phenomenally well in taking difficult chances. But I think Aston Villa's defence was just really, really resolute in that first half. Yes, they gave Arsenal chances, but then they risked it, and it paid off in the second half because by keeping a clean sheet with the likes of Diego Carlos and Pau Torres, and I think were phenomenal. I think, a centre-back partnership, which doesn't necessarily get enough credit because quite often they're rotators. Sometimes Longley comes in, sometimes Konza comes in from the right back to right centre-back, and Matty Cash plays. So, yeah, I think Aston Villa, credit to them. Yes, it was a little bit lucky. You have to say that. And I don't think any Villa fans will say they weren't lucky in that first half. But then to go in a 0-0 and then in the second half, I actually think Aston Villa were not massively, but definitely slightly the better team in that second half on paper. And eventually, just by hanging in there, creating chances, eventually they did make the breakthrough.
100%. I would go as far as not to say that Villa were marginally the better side in the second half. I think they were the much better side in the second half. We were so poor in that second half. I don't know what happened. First half, I think we were pressing really well, keeping the ball fantastically well. And I think looking at the players who dropped massively in the second half, Zinchenko and Jesus, I think first half they were pretty good, and they got absolutely destroyed after the game on social media for how poor they were playing. But I think first half they were okay, they were fine. It was just second half. I don't know if it was Arteta told them something, if it was maybe fatigue, but it just completely fell apart. There was no press, there was no attacking intensity, there was no chance creation at all from Arsenal in that second half, and Villa took full advantage. I think it was a mixture of how poor Arsenal were in the second half and how well Villa took advantage of that. Villa were the one pressing away from home against a side who were top of the league. They were the ones keeping that ball. They dominated possession, dominated proceedings, and they fully took advantage. And in that second half, they deserved to get 2 goals, honestly. I think they really, really did. The key takeaway from Arsenal that they needed was to keep that intensity up as much as they could into that second half. They weren't able to take advantage, which was another missed opportunity in that first half. And by the end, I don't think it was too much of a surprising result, considering how completely flipped the script was over half-time. It was really, really poor and one of the worst halves of football I've seen from Arsenal probably all season.
Wow, okay, you go as far to say that. I didn't necessarily think so. I thought it was Aston Villa just being really good, but you've watched more of Arsenal than me this season. But I think one point that you did mention there that I really want to pick on is the intensity and whether the Arsenal players were struggling with a bit of fatigue. Because when you look at the fixtures that both sides have had, Aston Villa are also in Europe. Arsenal played on Tuesday at home, so they didn't have any travel. Aston Villa played on Thursday night in the Conference League away to Lille. Not the furthest place to travel, France, but still, they had to travel. They had to go through all of that. And the fact that on the Sunday they can turn to the Emirates and have more energy and Arsenal players can look more fatigued even though they're rotated, I think that just shows to me how well Aston Villa played, because I think we didn't even mention it in the first half. Ollie Watkins had that great chance where he hit the post. Tielemans in the second half, I think it was the second phase of play from the corner, he wins 50-50 with Zinchenko and then he hits a crossbar and the post. So if we're being honest, Aston Villa did have some great chances to be ahead in the game before they even went ahead. And I think if we talk about the goals now, I mean the first one, I do have to question some of the defending, because I think it was maybe, I don't know exactly how to classify it. Maybe it was the second phase of play from a corner. Maybe it was the third phase of play. I'm not too sure because there were a few passes that happened beforehand. But I did think to myself that there were three Arsenal players in the box. And I think it was the two centre-backs of Saliba and Gabriel and Declan Rice versus Pau Torres and Ollie Watkins. And in that situation, it looked perfectly fine. One of the issues I have with the goal is the fact that as Havertz and Zinchenko are the ones at right back and rather than right wing, I suppose, who are the ones defending the ball coming into the box, and both of them let the cross come in too easily. And then none of the Arsenal players, anyone really, I think they end up pushing up a little bit too forward, and no one sees the fact that Bailey is free on the back post. He is the main danger, because if the ball went straight to him at the back post through the air rather than on the ground, everyone would have been like, "Oh my God, you can't leave that much space. It's criminal." But the fact that Gabriel and Raya, neither of them got the ball initially, and the Pau Torres made himself a bit of a nuisance, and then the ball ended up at Bailey's feet eventually. I think maybe it kind of seemed a bit more, I don't know what's the word, a bit more like it wasn't planned, it wasn't engineered, but actually I think when you think about it and the way that Aston Villa made Arsenal come forward and left so many spaces at the back from the second or third stage of a set piece, I think, fair play to Aston Villa, because at that point, they absolutely did deserve the goal. And then you can talk about the second one, because that second one, when you're going for the game, is just an absolute killer, isn't it?
Yeah, and Watkins did fantastically well. He is probably getting to one of those the best strikers in the league in terms of when he's got that sort of open space in front of him, running on to through balls, to loose balls, and finishing. And it was a very, very nice finish after sort of outmuscling, I think it was Smith Rowe he was up against. A lovely little dink over David Raya, and a deserved goal for him after he hit the post in the first half, unluckily after a good attempt at a finish anyway, marginal. I think if that was a few millimetres to the left, it would have gone off the post and gone in. So he deserved a goal. He played really, really well, especially in that second half. He was the one leading that press for Villa a lot of the time, and that's really what prevented Arsenal from having the ball. So yeah, lovely finish from Watkins, 2-0, and then at that point just completely dropped and got a lot to pick up. I think we've got Bayern Munich on Wednesday, so really need to sort of try as hard as we can to get that morale back, because that's potentially an even bigger game.
Yeah, and you said in the intro, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, if we're being honest, about the fact that it's Man City's league now. Congratulations to them for winning. But how are you feeling generally in terms of your morale and how you think the Arsenal players can pick themselves up and go for it? Because like you said, they still have some difficult fixtures. They're only 2 points behind Man City. I think what makes it tough is Man City's fixtures on paper don't look the toughest, apart from maybe Spurs away, which they don't have the best records. You still got a chance, and 2 points with 6 games to go, absolutely. It'd be ridiculous for anyone to say you don't have a chance, but do you think you'll do it now?
I don't know. It's really difficult because it's so easy to sort of react from the game that's just happened, but from the start of the season, we would have known, or not from the start of the season, but if we would have known how Villa would have done this season, from the start of the season, we would have known that any game against sort of top 4, top 5, top 6 is going to be one of the toughest in the league. And I think we need to try and get the mindset that this isn't the game that's bottled us the league. I think we've got to look at the whole season as a whole. You can't just keep reacting game on game, week on week. We've got to look back to our games in December, where we lost to Fulham, we lost to West Ham. We've also got to look to early in the season when we lost at home to Newcastle, who haven't had the best season. We drew to Fulham at the start of the season as well. There's been a number of games over the whole season that ultimately have led to us potentially not having enough points at the end of the season. It's not just this one Aston Villa game. But it's not all over either. City can still easily drop points. We've still just got to take it game by game, keep trying to win as many games as we can from now on. The pressure may be off a little bit, which could potentially help us in a strange way. It seemed last season when the pressure was on us and leading, that sort of capitulated a little bit and we saw a big drop off. We can still do it. Whether we will do it, I'm not sure. I think we can win every game we've got left, and I think City can drop points. So it's still there. We're only 2 points behind. Got to keep believing, and we've got to keep that morale up, as I was saying, with the fan base and the fans who were lucky enough to be at the Emirates and then didn't want to see the whole game through. We can't give up after one game. You've got to still back the team and back the club.
Yeah, absolutely, and very well said. Well, I'll be completely honest, I don't think I'm as positive as you are in terms of my own club, Liverpool, who lost 1-0 at home at Crystal Palace just before the Arsenal game, quite funnily enough. And I don't know if I'm being honest with you, mate, because I think going into this season, I thought, and a lot of Liverpool fans thought, this was going to be a very transitional season for Liverpool, and it was always going to be next year is our year. However, with Klopp obviously announcing that he's leaving, it's now turned from are you ready to we have to be ready. And Liverpool at the moment are just not showing it. We've had a very, very, very poor week, drawing 2-2 against Man United at Old Trafford in a game which we absolutely should have won considering the chances we had, losing 3-0 at home to Atalanta in midweek in the Europa League round, the quarterfinal, a game which I was at. And similar to you, and I made a note to make sure I talked about it, was Liverpool fans were leaving early as soon as Liverpool went 3-0 down to Atalanta. And I was looking around and I was thinking to myself, surely not leaving, because it's still only half-time in the leg. If you get one goal, then, everything can change. You can go away to Bergamo and you could do something, really. But a lot of Liverpool fans just weren't having it. And in this game, to now lose to Crystal Palace, I think Liverpool are hanging on by the skin of their teeth, and it is not looking good. It kind of feels like the Jurgen Klopp era at Liverpool is going to end on a bit of a whimper, and it's just there's not a lot of positivity around the club at the moment, considering we were talking about quadruple and potentially a treble earlier, only a few weeks ago. In fact, it was just before the international break. What did you make of the game and the result?
Yeah, it's crazy just how much can change in a couple of weeks. I mean, we were, before the Man United game, Liverpool obviously top, we were thinking it's in their hands, they're going to win it. Then it goes to Arsenal, it's in their hands, they're going to win it. It goes to City, it's in their hands, they're going to win it. With it being such a close title race, I think the fall when you're dropping into second and third just feels like a huge sort of weight dropped. It's crazy, but I think that's a reflection maybe of how close it's been and how well Liverpool have done and how surprisingly well I think they've done, considering this, as you said, was meant to be sort of a transitionary period to completely replace the midfield. So I think got to think of maybe how that feels dropping, obviously, from thinking you might be winning 3-4 trophies to only still being 2 points behind the leaders. I think got to try and think of that as a reflection of how well they've done this season as opposed to maybe how disappointed it might be this week. And especially in terms of the game, I think when you look at the game and even at the Atalanta and the Man United game, I think the one thing that sticks out is the chance conversion, and that's something that has completely fallen off. They had so many chances in this game, so many fantastic chances, which, to Crystal Palace's credit, they somehow ended up stopping them, whether it's through goal line clearances, blocks or saves, but you just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, and it feels like it's been that for the last 3 games now. And especially when you're looking at sort of the players who are normally bagging them week on week, sort of looking at Salah, Diaz, Jota as well, someone who's always been reliable throughout the years, and it just can't put it back in the back of the net, which is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, but I think not only that, mate, and we will come on to Crystal Palace in a moment because we absolutely have to, and they're a fantastic game. But just to finish up on Liverpool, I think the fact that they've been unable to convert the chances in front of goal when they've had very good chances, chances with a very high XG, and with world-class players, you expect Liverpool to take those chances. But I think one other area, I think, is the defence, and the fact that Liverpool have been unable to keep a clean sheet for a while now. I think it's been 9 consecutive games in all competitions Liverpool have not kept a clean sheet. The last time they kept one was when they beat Nottingham Forest 1-0 away from home, which was that Darwin Núñez headed goal in the 96th or 7th minute or something, after that very controversial drop ball was given to Liverpool. But yeah, that was the last time Liverpool kept a clean sheet. And yes, there are mitigating circumstances in the fact that we haven't had Alisson in goal. Trent Alexander-Arnold hasn't been there. We've had no Konate at times. Matip's been out for the season. Robertson's been unavailable. And then also Tsimikas. So Gomez has filled in. We had youngsters come in. The midfield has to be rotated and haven't had the full players. But these are issues that every team in the league has faced. And with the quality of players Liverpool have in their squad, they should still be doing better. I just think that at the moment, the defence isn't clicking and the forward line isn't clicking. And it's a bad form for numerous players throughout the entire team at the wrong stage of the season. If it was happening maybe earlier on in the season, you could say, okay, it's fine, we still got time for it to click. Now it does just feel like the season is going to end on a little bit of a whimper. But that being said, credit to Crystal Palace and Oliver Glasner, because when I was doing the podcast last week, what an idiot I was, talking about the fact that, maybe, Glasner's only won 1 in 6 games and just a home game to Burnley, who were in the relegation zone, and it's only because they went down to 10 men. What an idiot I was saying that right before they played Liverpool. Honestly, what was I thinking? But I think in this game, they absolutely showed what the quality side the Crystal Palace could be under Glasner. The defensive aspect of it, which you've touched about already, and I think forward line as well. I mean, the amount of times that they got through Liverpool's press and broke into Liverpool's backline so easily with the players of Mateta, Elise and Eze. I think there's some really promising signs for Crystal Palace to be really optimistic about going forward. Do you agree?
100%, yeah. I was really, really impressed with Palace, especially in certain spells in the game. I really liked that Glasner was sort of sensible in this game and had Eze and Elise as the two players behind the strikers, as opposed to playing someone like Edouard and dropping Eze back into the midfield. He knew how difficult of a contest this was going to be, and that he needed two more traditional midfielders to sit behind those creative players who are then in behind Mateta, who's been in really, really good form as well recently. He hasn't had sort of the best spell at Palace, but I think in the last few games he sort of looked like the striker they were hoping for when they first signed him. And a player that stood out for me and had a fantastic game was Tyreek Mitchell. Again, just the way he's adjusted to playing in this wing-back system, someone we normally see as a more traditional fullback. Not too sure how he would be going forward. And in this game, he was fantastic. He got the assist for Eze's goal. He was back all the way in the 6-yard box defending, bombing up and down the left-hand side really, really well. And just, a really, really good performance from Palace. Still some things, obviously, that I think they didn't do too well. I think they did let Liverpool control that second half a little bit too easily. I think the amount of possession and your passes completed were very, very high, and I think Palace were maybe a little bit over-reliant on that sort of 18-yard box defending. But when you defend as well as they did in that 18-yard box, it was absolutely incredible and so deserving of that clean sheet. I just think with Palace's position sort of in the league, they're sort of sitting around that sort of 14th place mark. I don't think they'll be able to get any higher this season, and I definitely don't think they'll sort of be creeping into the relegation zone. I think they just, as they progress, and as Glasner obviously has more time at the club, he'll probably need to work on that midfield area just a little bit, and you can see a really, really promising side there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, anything that they do now to the end of the season is definitely a positive, which they can take on to learn and develop even further going forward. And I think in the 3-4-3 system that Glasner likes to play, having Elise and Eze either side of the centre striker really helps, because those players are a lot closer together and a lot higher up the pitch. Because when Roy Hodgson was there, it was a 4-5-1. Eze was in the 10, Elise was on the right. Yes, they're very close together, but they're not very close together at the top end of the pitch, like in terms of being able to link up play together with themselves and another striker who can hold up the ball and they can play off. I think that was actually really impressive from Mateta. I mean, obviously, Mateta could have had a goal in this game as well. You said he was very unlucky. I mean, the one where Virgil van Dijk slips at halfway, I had such PTSD from Gerrard slipping against Chelsea in 2013-14, where I was just like, oh my God, it's happened again. But thankfully, for Liverpool's perspective, Andy Robertson got back. And I think the midfield as well as the defence had a decent game on the ball. When they were off the ball, I think I do agree they were too open to play against. But I thought Adam Wharton was fantastic for a player who played 10 Premier League games since the season, since he joined from Blackburn Rovers in the Championship. I think Will Hughes as well, he's been a He's been a player who's bounced around a lot of clubs. He hasn't really settled any one place in particular, but I think he's a very handy player for Oliver Glasner and Crystal Palace to have going forward. So I think he's a player who can come in and play probably either of the two positions. He could probably maybe fill in the defence as well. So I think he's a very excellent player, very tidy on the ball that Crystal Palace can definitely utilise going forward. And I think in terms of for Liverpool, what this means, on the same points as Arsenal, still 71 points, 2 points behind Man City, who we're going to come on to next. Do I think Liverpool can win the league? Yes, obviously. Do I think they will win the league? I've said even before this game and before this loss that I don't think Liverpool will win the league. I said I thought Arsenal were going to win the league. But now looking at it with new information and the latest set of results, I should say, I don't think Liverpool will win the league, because this was the game against Crystal Palace. You're talking about it with Arsenal, Toby, about the fact that Aston Villa was the game where you thought this was going to be one of the tough ones. Crystal Palace at home for Liverpool was one of the games where we thought, okay, we have to get 3 points. This is going to be one of the easiest fixtures. And to not get 3 points with the away fixtures of Fulham, Everton and West Ham to come, and then the home fixture against Spurs, away to Aston Villa, and then at home to Wolves, I just don't see it from a Liverpool perspective. How do you see it?
Yeah, especially when you say it like that in terms of the comparison between the results. Obviously, Arsenal against Villa's sort of I don't know, maybe a rating of a difficulty. If 10's the most difficult fixture, Villa at home is probably like a sort of a 6, maybe, I think it's fair to say. Whereas Palace at home, you're looking at maybe like a 2 or a 3. That's sort of one where you expect 90% of the time that Liverpool are going to win it, and not to. And that'd be one of the easiest games with those fixtures left. It's looking very difficult, but I'm still not writing Liverpool out, because you can look at the fixtures, you can look obviously what's just happened, but it depends how Liverpool can bounce back. Still only 2 points behind. That's just one Man City loss, a little bit more gained in goal difference, or Arsenal dropping points, which again could happen. I think any of these teams left could still drop points. Liverpool could still do it. Do I think they will? Probably not. No, especially when they do have their goal differences. There is starting to become a big gap now between Arsenal's obviously leading on goal difference, and City, I think, are only 5 goal difference behind them, and I think Liverpool are about 7 or 8 behind that as well. So they would be obviously still third favourites, but trying to be optimistic and keep it entertaining. Liverpool are still in it. They could do it, maybe.
Yeah, well, if either of the sides are going to do it, they're going to have to do it against this juggernaut of a side, which is Manchester City, as they did their job on the Saturday before the two other sides played, and they beat Luton Town 5-1 at the Etihad. And yes, I think we all expected Man City to win this game, but I think credit to Luton, because I think actually, despite the scoreline, there were a lot of positives for them to take. The fact that they went 1-0 down thanks to Hashioka own goal in the 70 seconds into the game was very, very, very unlucky on their part. And the fact that they didn't make it 2-0 until the 64th minute. I thought Luton Town actually had a very solid performance for 60 minutes. I think they just got worn down by the juggernaut that is Man City. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, I've literally got the exact same written down, that I think they did really well to keep it 1-0 until the 64th, and if it wasn't for that unlucky deflection, to keep it 0-0, it would have been till around the 60th, 70th minute. So I think that's fair play to them. I think City, on the other hand, were also quite happy being fairly patient. I think they knew those opportunities would come when Luton eventually would have to start to creep out a little bit, especially when they had that 1-goal lead. So overall, City did still dominate. 37 shots they had in this game compared to Luton's 4. It felt a little bit inevitable at times. And not really too much for me to talk about in this game. It felt like a classic Man City performance against a low block. Luton with a few exciting moments, obviously hit the bar when I think it was 1 or 2-0, which was a really good opportunity. Barkley getting a goal from the opportunity. So they took those opportunities of possession that they had really well, but City did look really comfortable for the whole game, which is scary, because when they start to look comfortable, they start to get in that rhythm. Even when they're resting key players in a game like this and come out with a 5-1 victory, it's not looking good. It's not looking good for Arsenal and Liverpool when City are sort of playing this football like this and looking comfortable doing it.
Yeah, well, now that you mentioned it, I think Kovacic started in the 6. I think Mateus Nunes started in one of the 8 positions. I think they had Doku on the left with Alvarez flanking Haaland. So Edison was back as well in the starting lineup in between the sticks. So it was almost a perfect performance, apart from the fact that they didn't get to keep a clean sheet. But I do think there are still defensive worries about Manchester City. I think the fact that they didn't keep a clean sheet will very much annoy Pep Guardiola. I think I remember seeing on the highlights his reaction to the fact that Luton Town scored. I think, like you said, a fantastic goal by Ross Barkley. Wasn't much power on the shot, but the accuracy was right there, bottom corner. Nothing Edison could have done about it. But I think he ended up throwing his ball on the floor because he's outraged. And I think it's been a while since Manchester City have kept a clean sheet. I don't actually know the amount of games it has been, but every time I do think a team plays Man City, oh, they can at least get one. And if they can get one and they can keep a clean sheet, a bit like Crystal Palace did against Liverpool, then they've got themselves a bit of a chance. I just think that Man City can just score so many goals. I mean, the fact that Phil Foden wasn't even playing, I don't even think he got on the pitch for a single minute. And the fact that Pep Guardiola at the moment seems to be rotating Phil Foden with Kevin De Bruyne, as one plays one game, the other one plays the other game, the game after. I think that's just absolutely mental. Two of your best players, and the fact that you can't find room for both of them, and you decide, you know what, I'm just going to rotate because I don't want to choose between who's going to play in that right-sided 8 position. I think that just goes to show the quality that Man City have, and I think more than anything else, they can tire an opposition down more so than anyone else. I think that's the thing that Arsenal aren't doing as much anymore, and Liverpool have never been able to do this season because they're always end-to-end. But I think for Luton Town, I think they can be very, very happy, like we said, for the performance for 60-odd minutes, because I think who was playing right wing back? Onyedima, who was playing because Kabora couldn't play against his former club. I think he did a very good job on Jeremy Doku for 60-odd minutes. I think, it was a very feisty battle down that side. I think he was putting in challenges. He wasn't letting Doku have his own way for the majority of the game. And it was up until the 3-0 where he did take down Doku for the penalty, where he just seemed a little bit tired. I think at that point in the game, Luton had lost a little bit of their structure. They were coming a bit more open because they thought to themselves, at this point in the game, with not much left to go, we have to really try and go for it. And they did so, and that meant that Gavardo were able to find Doku, and Doku was able to get past on Yedema easily. However, I do think that, I've criticised Jeremy Doku for not necessarily having the best final product, and I prefer Jack Grealish there, but to win the penalty, and do you want to talk about his goal to make it 4-1? Because I thought the way he beat two players was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he's been a funny player, Doku. He looks so exciting, and he looks like someone that, for his age as well, is a fantastic buy. And it's just he's still a little bit frustrating at times, like you said. His end product and his decision making maybe isn't quite there just yet. And I think Guardiola does give him quite a lot of freedom, which sometimes I think works really well for winning that penalty, for scoring that fantastic goal. Can sometimes work, but I think it occasionally maybe disrupts the balance of that Man City side at times. Like you said with Jack Grealish, there's a lot of sort of talk, I think, at the moment in terms of social media, how Grealish has maybe lost some of that drive in terms of when he's normally cutting back in and playing a simple pass. But I think the way that Grealish does that, he'll go up to the defender, push him back as much as he can, which is really, really key with his close dribbling. Then he'll turn and he'll have the fullback, he'll have the left-sided 8 in there in support, where he can play it out. The fullback then gets dragged a little bit out, and it opens up that pocket for those cutbacks, which we see Man City do all the time. That little pocket in sort of between the line of the 18-yard box and the 6-yard box, that's where they want the ball. That's where they want the winger. And I think when you have someone like Grealish who's going to be less so sort of dribbling, it's difficult to describe the transition of Grealish from when he was up against Villa, he'd be dribbling and driving from deep, which was a lot easier to beat people. Whereas when you're looking at City, dribbling and trying to drive past a fullback who's penned all the way in a low block with no space behind is very, very difficult. I think Pep Guardiola is kind of experimenting with Doku and letting him sort of try and do that very, very close dribbling to beat those fullbacks in those positions. We do see it work sometimes, but we also see maybe that Doku's trying a little bit too hard at times to get there. He's unable to get a good cross or a good shot in, which is why his numbers aren't particularly too good. But in this game, when that space opens up and Doku can produce a moment of magic, we really, really see like a fantastic, young, exciting player thrive, which is good to see, and it's exciting for the league. He's like, I guess, the new St. Maximan since he's gone to the Saudi League.
Yeah, you could even say he's a bit more of a clinical Adama Traore, considering he is still in the league and he just doesn't seem to be playing for Fulham because they've got so many good players. But yeah, for Man City, I think, yes, they can pass a team to death and they can break you down, but they've also got players who have individual moments of brilliance. I think Kovacic's goal and I think Gavardio's goal for the second and fifth, I just thought were two unbelievable strikes of a football. I think Kovacic's one on the edge of the box to make it 2-0. I just thought come on. I know they're probably a bit tired at that point in the game, but someone has to close him, Kovacic down a bit quicker than that, because the way he was able to take the ball first time, and the ball came from a bit of a distance as well. So someone should have recognized the danger on the edge of the box, a man unmarked, and closed Kovacic down. They didn't. And then Gavardio, who's someone who, had a fantastic strike against Real Madrid as well. And now he's done 2 for 2, cutting inside on his right foot. And I mean, if he keeps it up, people kind of start worrying about him cutting inside on his right foot. We were saying a couple of weeks ago, I think maybe against Arsenal, that they didn't mind letting Gavardio have the ball high up on the left-hand side because, he wasn't really going to break a team down. But maybe he can't pass a team and break them down like that, but he can absolutely strike a ball and put it in the top bins. I mean, 2 fantastic strikes, weren't they?
Yeah, he's becoming the new Cancelo at the moment. The one sitting at those little half spaces, whipping in crosses or trying to bang them in. Yeah, lovely, lovely goal. Keeper had no chance, and the same for Kovacic. Straight from the corner, top bins, 2 lovely goals, and just more weapons in City's arsenal as opposed to the cutbacks and the super high possession that we normally see.
Yeah, exactly. And we've already spoken about Man City, not only in this game, but in the Liverpool and Arsenal analysis. So I just want to finally focus on Luton before moving on. They're 1 point off Nottingham Forest, 5 games left, 5 cup finals to make sure that they keep their place in the Premier League. Brentford, Wolves, Everton, West Ham, and Fulham. Very, very winnable games. And I think, this is where the season starts now. They've done so well just to make sure that they're still in the fight. And yes, point deductions have helped them. But if we're being honest, point deductions have been given out to teams in Everton and Nottingham Forest. They've deserved them for breaking the rules. And now Luton might benefit from it. So, can they do it? I think we all think they can do it. But will they? Toby?
That's the classic. It's what we keep saying for every single one of these questions. Can, will. Luton can. I don't think they will. I think Everton and Forest have that little bit more in them. I think that Brentford will beat Luton next week and it will keep Brentford will be 100% safe. I think Everton have still got 2 games in hand and are a point or 2 ahead of Luton, if I'm not mistaken. I think they'll be able to pick up more points. I think that, Everton will beat Luton as well in that game, and I think those are the 2 fixtures that Luton need to at least draw to stay up, and I'm not sure if they'll be able to do it. I know Forest have got I don't think they've got the easiest run. I can't remember. It'll be, for me, between Luton and Forest. They are very close at the moment, but I think Forest will just edge it. Luton don't seem, I think, as good at the moment as they were when they had that sort of good spell where around the 3rd way through the season where they started to pick up more points and jump up a little bit. Just doesn't seem quite the same, and I'm not sure if they have that drive just yet. I'm not sure. If I had to bet on it, it probably would be Luton to go down, Forest to stay up. What about yourself?
Well, you've said that you think Brentford will beat Luton last week, so I've made it next week. Sorry, so I've made a note of that, and we'll revisit it and see what happens next week. Giving us a little prediction. I actually think Luton will stay up because I think I haven't got it right with me right now. But when we come to Nottingham Forest game, I've written down their fixtures, and I think they're significantly harder. I think they've got Man United and Chelsea. No, I think Man City and Chelsea at home, which is not going to be easy. And they've only got 2 home games left. And I think they've got 3 away teams who are all very much in and around where they are at the moment, which is going to be crucial. But to have those games, their preference would be to have those games against the teams around them at home rather than away. So I actually think Luton are going to do it. I think they're going to stay up in the league. And make sure you stay tuned to find out what happens as we move on then to Newcastle 4, Tottenham Hotspur 0. And my God, I don't think anyone predicted Newcastle to thump Spurs the way they did. What on earth happened in this game, Toby? Was it Newcastle being fantastic, Spurs being awful, or a little bit of both?
I'm honestly not really sure. I've been trying to think of that since obviously watched the highlights for this game, and I'm not really sure. Newcastle had 27% possession, had 18 shots though to Tottenham's 11, and Tottenham still created a decent number of chances in the first sort of 20, 30 minutes as well. So I'm not really sure what happened. It was a really, really weird game, and all of Newcastle's goals came from sort of long balls, or from one of them was from a Spurs mistake. But I think that is a good thing for Newcastle as well. They really took advantage of Spurs' high line, I think when we look at sort of the very high possession attacking teams in the league, Arsenal, City and Spurs, I think Arsenal and City are pretty decent at having a setup that covers those spaces behind, whereas I think for Tottenham it's still quite a clear weakness. One game for me that always sticks out since the start of the season was Spurs-Brentford, right at the start, where Rico Henry had a fantastic game down that left side as sort of the outlet for them. And I think in this game, a lot of sort of long balls over the top on that left-hand side towards Isak, towards Gordon, I think is where a lot of Newcastle's luck came from. So they definitely identified that and played well. But I don't know if Spurs were particularly bad either. They had a lot of possession. They created some good chances still. They just had that one weakness exploited essentially 4 times over, and Newcastle took the chances they had really, really well.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think it was a mixture of both, and I think that Newcastle took their chances when they had them, and I think Spurs were really, really bad in key moments defensively. I mean, if you break down the goals individually, like the first one, it's just Bruno Guimaraes just clearing the ball from the edge of his penalty area, and I think Udogie should do better there because I think he needs to get goal side of, I think it was Anthony Gordon, because at the time when Gordon tries to control it, he miscontrols it. The ball's still in the air. That gives Udogie enough time. He's quick enough to get goal side of Gordon. And I think also Mickey van der Ven runs too close to Udogie because he doesn't think he's going to get there, where he absolutely could get there. And van der Ven he just harries towards the ball, and he should just hold his position a little bit more. And I think Romero is just facing towards the opposition penalty area, and he's not on the half turn whatsoever, which lets Isak run the back of him. And I just thought to myself, that is such a poor goal, because I think there was 3 individual I wouldn't say errors, but 3 players who all will look back on that and think they could have done better. And they are quality players, so absolutely do think they could have done that. The second one, though, that just has to be down to Spurs just having an absolute howler. The fact that Vicario is keeping the ball at his feet, and he's keeping it for a little bit while trying to entice a Newcastle player on the press, and then he's unable to do so, and then eventually he does roll the ball out so far from his penalty area that he then decides he has to kick it. Newcastle win the ball, and then what on earth is Pedro Porro doing? Just kicking the ball blindly back into his own penalty area and just gifts the ball to Anthony Gordon, and he makes it 2-0 within the space of a couple of minutes. And I thought to myself, do you know what? Yes, Newcastle haven't had the lion's share of possession, but when they've had the possession, they've been going straight for Spurs' defence, trying to hit them on the transitions, which we know is their weakness because they commit so many players forward. And we've been saying it for a couple of weeks, haven't we, Toby? That Spurs, if they're going to evolve and going to take the next step, they need to be better defensively. And it's tough because players who we think have been playing really well, even in the defensive side, like players like Mickey van der Ven, I think just all collectively just had a really bad game. And at the top level, that simply isn't unacceptable.
Yeah, it's such a funny one when the goals are kind of caused by mistakes. It always makes me question whether have Spurs played bad or have they just had bad moments. And I think overall they probably didn't play bad. But when you're making that many mistakes in a game, it's you're just kind of giving the chance to Newcastle, really. And as you said, I think that's why there is a big difference, or a big gap rather, between the top 3 and sort of looking at Spurs and Villa, is that I think Spurs and Villa are still sort of building that defence. They've got their attack sorted really, really well, and I've loved watching both sides this season. They're really, really exciting, fantastic going forward, but it's just making sure they balance that out with the appropriate cover in behind, which we have seen at times as well. Van der Ven and Romero, fantastic sort of recovery defenders, but just in this game, far, far too many mistakes. And just a point I wanted to make of Newcastle and the way they took advantage of that. A lot of, I think, that recovery in terms of Spurs has been down to Vicario. He's got a really, really high percentage of out of penalty area actions this season. A fantastic sweeper keeper. And the way that Newcastle played those sort of through balls and balls over the top, some of them were just so well weighted that it would go past sort of their defensive line sitting on the halfway line, but just not enough on it so that Vicario can come out. And I can just imagine by sort of looking at some of the goals that would have really been drilled into the likes of Bruno Guimaraes or Fabian Schär, who were playing those sort of long balls out when Newcastle did have possession, which they didn't have much of, but when they did, they really, really sort of focused on trying those long balls. And to win 4-0 with such little possession is about as efficient as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And to back up the point you just made about the weight of the pass, I mean, the third goal for Newcastle was absolutely on point and exactly like that. Again, Bruno Guimaraes over the top, and nothing any of the Spurs defenders can do because Alexander Isak is onside from his own half. The ball's weighted so perfectly that the goalkeeper can't come out, and Isak just goes on to score again. But we should talk about James Maddison, who, speaking out last week, was probably a little bit fortunate to stay on the pitch after what looked like a bit of a punch against the Nottingham Forest player. And this week, his challenge, I can't remember. I think it's Jacob Murphy. His very high foot, which ended up hitting in the back. I think it was maybe fortunate to stay on the pitch because if Murphy didn't turn his back and he was facing Maddison, he would have hit him straight in the stomach, and I think he probably would have got sent off. And I think last week was unfortunate, and I think this week he's probably fortunate as well. How did you see it?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those, like you said, if he was the other way, maybe one that VAR would have looked at, maybe one the ref would have looked at a little bit differently. Circumstantial, though, I guess, benefit of the doubt in terms of giving him a bit of leeway, considering the positioning of both players. But yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row now for Maddison, and maybe some of this coming from frustration in terms of how he's playing. Sort of personally, I think we saw him in red hot form at the start of the season. That injury seems to have set him back a little bit, and he just can't seem to quite find that rhythm again, which is frustrating for him, and it's frustrating for Spurs as well, because he was the one pulling the strings really at the start of the season, and we were saying he's guaranteed to be signing of the season, but now I think he's almost going to be having to wait again till next season to really become that standout man again, which is a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, we've got to talk about Alexander Isak as well. 2 goals in this game. He's now got 17 goals in the Premier League this season. He's joint third behind Erling Haaland and Ollie Watkins, level with Dominic Solanke and Mohamed Salah. And a player who Newcastle spent a lot of money on when they signed him from Real Sociedad, came with a very high reputation. Struggled initially a little bit, took him a little bit of time, but he's absolutely hit the ground running. He looks like an absolute bargain now for Newcastle. And if this is going to be a Newcastle side with the new owners who are eventually going to be wanting to challenge for the Premier League titles and Champions League titles, Alexander Isak is going to be such a crucial forward for them, because I think he is one player who you could see slotting into most teams around Europe, especially the top sides. But Newcastle now up to 6th place, 10 points off Spurs. They're probably not going to make it into the top 5 this season, but pinching 5th off Manchester United, and they've got the goal difference is much better than Man United as well. And there's been a lot of talk about Eddie Howe and this Newcastle side, but 6th place, do you think that'll be a very good finish for them this season?
I think 6th place is a good finish. I think in terms of relative of maybe how far off Tottenham and Villa they are, it would be a little bit disappointing, especially being able to qualify for the Champions League last year. Maybe there was the overperformance, and I don't think their squad is Champions League quality just yet. But I think when you compare their squad to Villa, even potentially compare it to Spurs, I think they're a little bit worse off than Spurs. But compared to Villa, I think the quality of the squads is pretty similar. So I think overall they might be a bit disappointed. It's going to be a really interesting transfer window, though, for Newcastle. I think this one could potentially be their sort of make or break. I know they've got some financial stuff they need to work out. There's rumours of them needing to sell a player, selling someone like Isak, which I think would be absolutely mental. And if they do, Arsenal need to go in and bid whatever for him, because I think he is superb. I don't think they will. I think they'll try and sell off some of the sort of lesser players in their team. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether they go out and sign one or two really, really good stand-up players, or maybe some sort of like a larger number of smaller signings, 4 or 5 squad players, to try and sort of raise the lowest quality player in their squad, if that makes sense. I think that's the decision they've got to make. But overall, 6th place would be good for them. But being 10 points, I think, off Champions League doesn't feel great when you qualified for it last year.
Absolutely, and there's still no guarantee that 5th place even is going to be Champions League, considering how some of the English sides are doing in Europe, and how some countries, I think it's Germany and Italy, could potentially take the Champions League spot away from them, which would be a bit of a hammer blow for whoever misses out. But a side who are in desperate need of a good summer transfer window are Man United, as they drew 2-2 away against Bournemouth. And I think the biggest criticism I can give Man United is the fact that going into this game, I thought Bournemouth had a very good chance of beating them. Unfortunately for them, I think they only got a draw because I think they were the better side on the day. Is that how you saw it?
Yeah, I agree. I think Bournemouth deserved to win. I think overall in the game, they were really, really good. Again, they looked very free flowing in possession. They looked fairly comfortable, I think, at the back. I don't think they gave United too many chances. And they are working their way up in that league now. They are sort of in and around those teams that we have been very impressed with this season. Looking at sort of the Fulhams and the Wolves, I think they're only a couple points off them now. They could really sort of press on and get into the top half, which is fantastic. And again, I think this game was a reflection of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was so disappointed for Bournemouth because they started off the game really well. I mean, the fact that from an Onana goal kick, Garnacho loses the ball, and then Senesi plays the pass straight to Dominic Solanke, and he plays it, and he gets it past Kambuala, sorry. And I feel really bad for him because he's such a young lad, but he had a bit of a howler in this game. But what are you meant to do when you have 70 first team centre backs injured out already, and then you have to step up? I think he had a fantastic game against Man United the last time they were out, but I think this one he did struggle, especially on the right hand side, because I don't think Dallo gave him any protection as well. But then obviously Dominic Solanke goes ahead and then he makes it 1-0. But I think the fact that, Man United got themselves back into it was probably fortunate, but I think it was that individual quality which we do know that Bruno Fernandes is capable of, and he has produced all season since he's actually joined Man United. But I think it was only in rare moments. But having a player like Bruno to really bail out of trouble isn't always the worst thing, is it?
Yeah, he seems to have sort of stepped up in the last 5 or 6 games. Maybe not had the best season overall, but he has still been one of Man United's standout players again, and on his day is still one of the best creative midfielders in the league. I was going to say in Europe then, and I think that was maybe a stretch too far in the last couple of seasons, but in the league, certainly, he is still a quality player and someone who can produce those moments when you need them. A really nice finish from a slightly scrappy goal this week and a well-taken penalty, but another 2 goals for them when they desperately needed, and he is still that man that they're looking to pick them up a little bit. Players like Rashford aren't quite delivering at the moment. Højlund doesn't seem to be scoring. And Mainu and Garnacho, still very, very young, I think, to rely on them, and you're not going to get those sort of moments week in, week out from them. As good as they are, and as fantastic as they will be world-class players in the future. I think trying to rely on those players at the moment is not a good place. So Bruno is really that sort of only senior player who is stepping up at the moment.
Yeah, and he absolutely could have had a hat-trick in this game as well. Right at the end of the first half, he had a shot from about 30 to 35 yards, hit the crossbar. Neto was rooted on the spot, couldn't do anything about it. So he could have, had an even better game and probably could have got Man United the 3 points had it not been for the fact that, I think Kluivert, that second goal for Bournemouth, I thought was absolutely fantastic. Yes, he was in acres of space between Dallo and Kambuala, who, as I said, had a terrible right-hand side of the defence. And I think actually Ten Hag probably should have switched Dallo and Wan-Bissaka to help out Kambuala a little bit more. But I think Kluivert's finish, the fact that he was so aware of the space and where it was, and the fact that he was able to find it, drive towards the defence, and then get the goal, I think he was thoroughly deserved. But then we need to talk about a little bit about the refereeing, which we haven't done so far, which has actually been quite nice. But to start off with, the penalty for Man United, which was the handball by Adam Smith, the shot from the ball from Kobe Mainu, deflects off a Bournemouth defender, hits Adam Smith. I think it was a penalty. However, I don't like that it's a penalty because I think it's so soft, but I think the rules have made it so that it has to be given a penalty. How did you see it?
Yeah, I agree, mate. It was a penalty, and I think Smith knew that. I think there weren't really any complaints from the Bournemouth fans or players. It's just, I don't know if it's difficult because it's you can't really change the rules and not allow that to be a penalty because his arm was sticking right out. It potentially could have gone through to a Man United player or something. It's just one of those that's unlucky, and that they do happen, and they could happen to everyone. So it's an annoying one, but definitely a pen. I think it's fair.
Yeah, and then the second decision, which I think Bournemouth could be a little bit more aggrieved about, was the Ryan Christie penalty, which was originally given on the field but was overturned by VAR because apparently the challenge wasn't in the box and it was just outside. In my opinion, I thought the challenge did start outside the box, but I do think it carried on into the box, which technically, according to the rules, I think makes it a penalty. So I think it was a penalty, but I didn't see enough in VAR from the highlights to think that the decision should have been reversed, and that's where I have an issue with VAR about the clear and obvious. But maybe because I don't have any skin in this game, but either side, that I was like, if it's a free kick, okay, fine. If it's a penalty, okay, fine. How did you see this one? This one's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, I thought Bournemouth will feel hard done by because they should have won the game, maybe more than this decision. It's a difficult one. I think it maybe depends on how the ref and the VAR saw the contact. For me, I saw it more of I think it was a trip as opposed to like a sort of a tug and a pull down. I think the most contact was on the legs. And I think normally for contact that causes a player to fall down, it's sort of when it first happens is what causes the player to fall and for it to be a foul, as opposed to sort of legs getting tangled and then carrying into the box. So I think maybe for one of the first times ever on these decisions, Mev, I actually think that we would disagree, and I think a free kick was probably the right decision in terms of this one for me. As much as I wanted to see Bournemouth go on and win and Man United to be embarrassed again, it was, I think, probably the fair decision, but I also understand in terms of, like you said, was there enough for VAR to sort of see it as a clear and obvious error? Maybe not. Understand that Bournemouth fans are going to be annoyed as well, but maybe I think the right decision was given.
Yeah, and another thing that might be a first time on the podcast is if I get a win in the quiz.
Hey, you had that one lined up. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I do win every now and then, but it's not as often as you are. Maybe because my questions are a bit too easy for you. Maybe because you're just unbelievably knowledgeable and so great at football trivia. But
oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have to give you credit because you've done so well so far. But yes, it is time for the halftime quiz, which isn't really the halftime quiz. It's more the 3/4 quiz. And it is the football tenable. If you don't know how to play, we each have to give each other a topic and we have to name 10 things to match that category. And Toby, what are the scores?
So we have only done one of these in this season of the quiz, as I was absent last week. It is 10 points to myself and 8 points to you after 1 week, so all to play for still.
Yes, I think all to play for, and you were skiving off last week, so just to make sure you kept your lead, so I didn't have a chance of catching up.
Just leave it at one episode, and then I'll win.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think there's still all to play for, still more few more weeks to go. Who would like to cover first this week?
You know what? I'm going to give you your list first, Mev.
Okay, I will happily go first.
Okay, so same rules as always. You get 3 incorrect guesses, and then on that 4th incorrect guess, the time stops. 5 minutes for your list, Mev. And I am looking for, please, 10 teams to have won the Champions League or European Cup, as it used to be called, outside of England and Spain. And your time starts now.
Okay, outside of England and Spain. So I immediately go to the other countries and France, and I'm pretty sure Marseille have won one.
Marseille is tenable.
Okay, so Marseille have won one. So I think they're the only French side to have done it. So I'm going to move around. Let's go to Portugal. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm going to say them as an answer, that Porto did it under Jose Mourinho.
They certainly did. In 2004, Porto is tenable.
And I'm going to write these down. These are not my answers. But obviously in Portugal, I think Lisbon may have done it back in the day. I'm not sure. I definitely don't think Braga have. And who's the other one? Who's the other big club? It's I've said Porto as an answer. Lisbon. Oh, Benfica. Benfica might have done it, but I'm going to write them down. So then let's go to the other country. Let's go to Germany. And let's say Bayern Munich as an answer.
Of course. I can't remember how many times they've won it. Maybe 4 or 5, but they are certainly tenable.
Yeah, and then I don't know for certain which other clubs in Germany have done it. So let's move on then to the Netherlands, and I'm going to say Ajax.
Of course, again, multiple time winners. They are tenable. That's 4 answers, and you're about halfway through now.
I probably should hurry up then. I'm just rambling on a little bit. So let's go for Italy, and let's go for AC Milan.
Tenable. That's number 5.
And let's go for Inter Milan.
Another multiple Champions League winner. That's 6 so far.
Okay. I think they've done it, so I'm going to say them. I'm going to say PSV.
PSV, that is a cracking answer. They are certainly tenable. They have won it once, I believe.
And when you say English, does that include Scottish teams?
It does not.
So I'm going to say Celtic.
Yes, they have won it at least once, maybe twice, but I think it might only be once. But yeah, they're tenable. You've got 8, 2 to go.
2 to
Just
go.
under 2 minutes left as well.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I definitely get it. Have Juventus done it? I'm not sure. In Italy. Napoli? No. Turkey, Galatasaray. Feyenoord? No. Greek sides? Do you know what? I think they have done it, so I'm going to say it. Have Rangers won it?
Rangers is your first incorrect answer. Unfortunately, Mev, they have not won the European Cup.
In that case, I'm also going to go for Benfica.
And Benfica are tenable. That's number 9. Yeah, I think they've won it multiple times, I believe, back in the 60s. I think when Eusebio was there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I'm trying to think now. Germany, surely another side apart from Bayern Munich have done it. What sides are there? There's Dortmund. Leverkusen, no. Wolfsburg. Werder Bremen. I'm missing a big one in Germany. I know I am. Schalke. Oh, Schalke done it. How many lives do I have left?
You've got 3 incorrect guesses left, so 2 lives.
Okay, well, I'm going to say Schalke.
Schalke are not tenable, unfortunately. No,
How long do I have left?
Won it. You have got about a minute and a half left, so still some time.
Okay, don't need to panic just yet.
Only one correct answer for the full house.
Yeah, I should know. I don't think it Turkish. Oh. I'm trying to think. Don't like it.
There are only 15 teams on this list, I believe.
Yeah. Have a Greek side done it?
Yeah, 15. Just under a minute left now, 50 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to say Galatasaray.
Galatasaray are not tenable. As I say, wearing my Fenerbahce jumper again. Unfortunately not. One incorrect guess left. You've got about 35 seconds now.
Okay, come on. There's got to be another German side. Yes, Dortmund got to the final. They didn't cross the line. Not Augsburg. I'm missing a big German side and I know it. But Italy, Inter, AC. There's got to be another side. Udinese, Torino. Not Sassuolo.
15 seconds now, Mev.
Roma.
Throw in an answer. 10. 5 seconds. 4,
I don't like it, but I'm going to say
3.
Dortmund.
Unlucky for me. He's got the 10.
Yeah.
Well done, mate. 10 out of 10. They won it once in the 90s, I believe.
Oh, God. I felt like they maybe had, but I wasn't certain. And it was them and a couple of others.
Yeah, very well done, mate. You got all 10. So the 5 that you didn't say, you didn't need to say, were Juventus. You did say them. That was one of them.
Yeah.
They won it 3 times, I believe. The other big German side was Hamburg SV.
Yeah.
Obviously, have dropped off a cliff massively in the last few years. Feyenoord in Netherlands were the other Dutch side. They won it once. And then the 2 fun names on the list were Steaua Bucharest, who won it once, and Red Star Belgrade, who also won it. I think they both won it in the 90s, actually, which is really recent for obviously how crazy it would be if they won it now. So, yeah, 10 out of 10. Smashed it, mate. Well done.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I was trying to think of Hamburg. I'm sort of another German team that plays in blue, so I went with Schalke.
Yeah, I thought when you said Schalke, I thought, I bet he's gonna he might have thought Hamburg, or he's gonna think it next. But yeah, didn't need it.
Yeah,
well done.
No, that was all right. I'll take 10. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. Are you ready for yours then?
Yeah, let's get into it, boy.
Right, so this was pretty easy, so I had to add a little stipulation to make it a little bit harder for yourself.
Nice.
Considering it is about your own team. And Toby, I would like you...
No, I hate the Arsenal ones. The pressure is too much.
I would like you to name me 10 Spanish players who played for Arsenal, not called Santi Cazorla, Mikel Arteta, or Cesc Fabregas.
That's so specific.
Yes, well, you did it to me with the Liverpool top goal scorers, not including...
That's true, yeah.
Mane,
so Cazorla, Arteta, and Fabregas.
And Fabregas, yes.
Okay.
And your time starts now.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm going to go position by position. I think it's probably my best bet. So I'm going to start in goal with Almunia.
Yes, he is tenable.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other keepers, but I can't think of them. So let's move into right back and we'll go for Bellerin.
Hector Bellerin is also tenable.
We will go for Mikel as well. Or
Who?
Miguel, rather. Miguel.
Ah, yes.
Gazi
Yeah.
Miguel, I think
Yes,
his name was.
he is tenable. Yes, I just didn't think you'd get him.
Nacho Monreal.
He is also tenable. That's 4.
Okay. Any other Spanish defenders? Oh, I swear we had a centre-back who was Spanish. But I can't think of him off the top of my head. I'm thinking... I can picture it. Oh, I can picture it. It wasn't... We had that... Oh, no, is it him? Was he Spanish? Pablo Mari. Was he Spanish or Brazilian? I feel like he might have been Spanish, and I don't know why. I'm going to write him down, but I'm not going to say him just yet. Okay, let's move into a bit further forward. We'll go for Lucas Perez.
He was. That is number 5.
We'll go for Denis Suarez.
He is tenable. That's number 6.
Very strange player, signed on loan from Barca, I think it was, and he was also at City at one point. Okay. Do we have any Spaniards in the side at the moment? I don't know if we do. Any other Spanish midfielders? Obviously, there's Cazorla, Arteta, and Fabregas. That's them covered. Any other Spanish midfielders that I can think of? Jose Antonio Reyes.
Yes, that is tenable.
Ooh, and then strikers as well. Strikers, wingers, and midfielders. I'm going to go for Pablo Mari.
He is tenable, yeah.
Nice, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, how much time have I got left?
Just still over halfway.
Oh, nice, okay. Right, let's think of these midfielders. Flamini. Where was he from? I think he was French. Yeah, he was definitely French. Spanish midfielders. Maybe ones as well who were in like a youth team back in the day. Who did we have? No, Bielik was Polish. I'm just thinking of all like these really random youth players like Zelalem. That's a throwback, the American dude. Struggling now.
See, yeah, that's why I had to add the stipulation.
Yeah, this is... who else is there? Danny Ceballos.
Yes, he is tenable. It's number 9.
From Madrid. He had an incredible debut against Burnley and then didn't do much.
I remember it, yeah.
Right. There must be quite a few others.
1:40 left. 1 more to get.
Okay. We definitely had like some young right winger, I'm pretty sure, but I will not get his name. Any other players who like randomly used to play for us, who now are in like the Spanish league, maybe? No, I'm struggling now, and I'm going to kick myself when I hear these. Any players who... I'm trying to think back to like 2000s. Let's think of the Invincible side. Was there any in there? No. Oh, no, Eduardo. Eduardo was Croatian. Denilson, I think, was Brazilian. Edu was Brazilian. There was obviously Fabregas. Can't say him. Who else was in that side? That sort of era, 2006. Struggling.
30 seconds.
I don't think I'm going to get any more, you know.
You're missing a massive one.
Really?
I can't give you the hint because as soon as I give you the hint... Well, I can tell you the hint. He's a goalkeeper.
Oh my God. There is one in the current side. I'm not going to say him though till the last second in case I can get another one.
Well, you've got 5 seconds.
David Raya.
Yes,
how
he
have I
is
looked past
tenable. And that is your time as well.
Oh, I take it. Thank you for the big hint there, mate. That was
I
very
know. I
kind.
was just like, oh, if he doesn't get it, the comments might hate him. So I've got to give it to him. But yeah, that was 10. And to be fair, you don't have many others. That's why I had to add the stipulation of no Cazorla, no Arteta, no Fabregas, because the only ones left, there was a defender called Joe Lopez.
Wow, I've never heard that name in my life.
There was another one called John Terrell, who's a midfielder.
Again, no, I would never have got that.
Yeah, and the last one was Julio Pleguezelio.
How do you spell that? Or how is that? Say that again.
So it's Julio, and then his last name is Pleguuezeuelo.
That rings a bell, but again, I never would have said that. Wow. So that was there was 10 that I would have got. So that was a good list.
Yeah, and you probably shouldn't have got it.
Yeah, you spoon-fed me the extra point, but that makes it 20 points to 18. So thank you very much for helping me keep a 2-point lead. Very kind of you, Mev.
Well, no, that's all right. I just couldn't let you not get the current player in the squad.
Yeah.
That would have been a bit awful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Anyway, as you managed to keep your 2-point lead, it is Nottingham Forest who are unable to advance the lead over Luton Town, as they drew 2-2 at home against Wolves. And do you think this was a point gained for Nottingham Forest or 2 points dropped?
I think in terms of the fixture and coming up against Wolves, it's definitely a point gained because Wolves have been a really good side this season. Forest have been good at home, but I still think going into this game, Wolves would have been favourites to win. But probably on the reflection of the game, they probably feel that they've dropped 2 points because they played really, really well. They were the better side on the day, I think. Morgan Gibbs-White again had a fantastic game. And they probably should have come away, I think, winning. And yeah, it was a very sort of frustrating goal. The second goal that they conceded, very scrappy as well. So I think they'll be kicking themselves a little bit, especially at this stage of the season, and especially how desperate they are to pick up points to try and extend that gap, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought one player who was magnificent yet again was Morgan Gibbs-White. Like I said last week, that in this late on in the season, he just turns up and he just delivers for Nottingham Forest. It's just such a shame he doesn't do it all throughout the season, because if he did, then Nottingham Forest probably wouldn't be in the position that they are at the moment. But I thought it was a lovely header for his goal to make it 1-1 for Nottingham Forest. And then his celebration in front of the Wolves fans against his former club. A little bit, on the crossing the line. Should he have done it? But I think, fair enough. It's against your former side. They didn't want to. They sold you, and now you're coming back and scoring against them. So, fair enough. But I do think that both sides had chances, and they could have actually won the game either way. But I think one player who Wolves are thoroughly happy to have him back is Matheus Cunha. 11 goals and 6 assists so far this season. Only 3 more returns, and they get 20 goals and assists this season. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. Arguably one of the players of the season for Wolves, and they are a much better side for having him in the team.
Yeah, their record signing really, really stepped up this season. Seems to fit into that sort of attacking unit of a 3. He's able to drop in and let those wingers go on beyond him. He's able to pick up that ball from deep, really drive forward, and having those options of those wingers who come inside. Normally looking at Hwang and Neto when there's no injuries, but it's been sort of Sarabia and Doyle recently who are able to run into those spaces from passes from Cunha, or even spreading it all the way out to fullbacks. He plays such a good hybrid role between sort of a creative number 10 and as an out-and-out striker, which we see and it reflects in his numbers in terms of good goal returns and good assist returns. So really, really good all-round attacking player, and someone who's so good to watch as well. He loves to take on, and he loves driving the ball, which is what we want to see. It's entertaining. So yeah, quality player, and another sort of player in that Wolves side that I think we're really excited to see them all when they're all fit and playing again.
Yeah, and a couple of weeks ago I asked you the question about if the Wolves were on the beach, but the way they've been performing recently, yes, they've been struggling to keep clean sheets and they're conceding a lot of goals, but they're definitely still in games. They're definitely still trying in games of football, because with the results against sides who desperately need points, they are making sure that they are a bit of a party pooper. And we were talking about the Nottingham Forest fixtures earlier. I've actually got them now that we've come to this game in my notes. The next game is absolutely massive, away to Everton. Whoever, a draw will be okay for both sides, but I think if one side were to win that, I think that'd be massive. And I think if one side were to lose that, that could be absolutely catastrophic. And yes, it is Man City at home after that, and then Sheffield United away, and then Burnley away as well, against two sides who, by the time they play them, could be relegated or they could still be fighting. But I think, Yeah, Nottingham Forest do have some tricky fixtures, especially at home. Does that change your mind at all, or do you still think they're going to stay up?
No, I think it is those two games, those Sheffield United and Burnley games, that made me think they're going to stay up. I think if they were any other teams, I wouldn't be too sure. I think Everton are probably going to beat Forest, maybe get at least a point, but I think Everton will win that game. I think Forest will then go on and beat Sheffield United and Burnley away. I don't think either of those teams will be able to put up much of a fight against Forest, even though Forest's away form isn't great. And I think that'll be enough to keep them up. I think 6 points will do it. Luton will have to pick up at least 7 points out of their remaining 5 games, which I just don't see happening. So yeah, for me, I think Forest will stay up. It is just those 2 big away games against Sheffield United and Burnley. You still thinking it's going to be Luton who are going to be the ones to stay up?
Yeah, I think so. I just think that if Nottingham Forest had those games at home, it would have been much better. But the fact that, I think Man City and probably even Chelsea will be write-offs. And if they lose, you kind of shrug your shoulders and go, oh, well, you don't expect to get anything from them. But I think that'll mean that there'll be too much pressure on the other 3 games, which Luton won't have because they'll have 5 winnable games. And if you lose one, then you can, okay, fine, we still got 4 more. Whereas it's, oh, okay, we lost that one. Okay, now this week we're going to get a bit of a pumping, and then next week we've got to try again. I don't think that's the best way for it to go. I think if it were consecutive, I think it would have been fine. But the inconveniently placed Man City and Chelsea fixtures. So for me, I do think Luton are going to stay up, and I think Nottingham Forest will go down. But 2 sides who have no intention of going down and are fighting for Europe are West Ham and Fulham. And it was Fulham who got the win away at West Ham. 2-0 it was. Ander Herrera with both the goals. Could have had a hat-trick on the day. Fulham were great, weren't they?
Yeah, they had so many chances. They could have probably ended up winning sort of 3, 4, even 5-0, I think, with some of the chances that they had. Just couldn't put a few of them in the back of the net. But all of their moves were really, really well worked. They moved it up the pitch really nice and quickly. I think Iwobi had a really good game despite missing a few chances as well. And Pereira, yeah, that first goal from Pereira was such a nice finish. Just sat down Fabianski into an open net and very, very nicely taken. He had a really good season. I think, was it last year? He was racking up a decent number of assists. This season, I think he's been a little bit quieter, not always had sort of the best game, but this game he was fantastic, and so were Fulham. And I think now, as I was saying, with Bournemouth in that sort of position between sort of 13th to 8th, I think there's only sort of like 2 or 3 points in it between them. And with the way that cup results and Champions League being 5th place, as low as sort of 8th could be European football potentially. And I think all of those teams could be eyeing that up a little bit, really, really pushing for it. And some of the fixtures towards the end of the season, just it's nice to have sort of mid-table fighting for something. I think that's really, really exciting, and just creates more tense games, more moments for us to talk about. So yeah, good result for Fulham. West Ham will be pretty disappointed, I think, with that performance though, especially at home.
Yeah, I think absolutely so. I mean, for the first goal, yes, Pereira did amazingly well, but I don't know what Mavropanos is doing with the ball there. I think he's maybe trying to just knock it down for Fabianski to then be able to pass it out of the back or something, but really, if you put his foot there, there's no danger whatsoever, but he just essentially just gives it back to Pereira. That's not great defending. I think it's his first season in the Premier League, so, I mean, starting regularly for the Premier League, obviously he was at Arsenal prior, but I think Zuma and Aguerd are probably first choice and are probably the better centre-back partnership. And I think individually they are less error-prone. But I think Mavropanos potentially is the future at his age. I think he's either 24 or 25. So I think maybe that's why David Moyes keeps playing, because he sees him as a future. And I think for the second goal, again, yes, it was on the counter. Yes, they were disjointed. But I think Johnson, who came on the pitch for Kufal in the second half, I thought it was really poor tracking back to be able to see your man in front of him and not give everything to try and get back ahead of him. And I think even before Willian puts a cross in, I think you can see, not Willian, sorry, Iwobi. Willian passes the ball to Iwobi. And I think before Iwobi puts the ball in, Alvarez does look behind him. He sees the fact that Pereira is free behind him, but he thinks his man Ben Johnson's going to get back and get to him. He should maybe just step another yard, and I think the danger's gone. I think very fine moments where West Ham could have done better in the game, didn't do so, and then Fulham got a 2-0 win. And most importantly, from Marcus Silva's point of view, a clean sheet, which they have been struggling to get recently. But a team who absolutely shot themselves in the foot were Burnley, as they drew 1-1 at home to Brighton. And Burnley, who, before we get on to the goals, who are showing a little bit of fight, maybe a little too late, but they're giving it the right go. And against a Brighton side who, yes, haven't been in great run of form recently, are a top quality side with top quality players, and arguably you could say they were the better side on the day.
Yeah, I heard a crazy stat that Burnley had they gone 1-0 up, I think, in 13 games this season, which for them to be sitting on only 20 points is crazy. Obviously, if they were able to hold on and win those games, that's already 39 points, let alone the games maybe they went one goal down and got back to a draw or a win themselves. So yeah, they have shown moments throughout the season. I think in the last few weeks, again, they're still sort of playing that pretty decent attacking football. They've got some good ball players in there. They, especially in this game, I think going forward were very, very good. I think Brighton were as well. I think Brighton created a decent number of chances for themselves. And I think both of those attacks were maybe helped by how poor defensively both sides were. They looked really, really open, and I was quite surprised that this game wasn't sort of 2-2, 3-2 either way, because I think defensively they were both shocking, and the way that they attacked and played so well, and then the way that the two goals came about from two absolute stinkers was a really, really strange game.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and I think I can tell you why Brighton didn't score any goals in this game. Didn't score any goals in this game as a result of their own players. Was because they had zero big chances in the whole game. Burnley had three, and that's not something you'd normally say of this Burnley side, especially to the side of the quality of Brighton. But I think, yeah, I mean, the Burnley goal, I think, is just hard work and endeavour, and you just got to go for those 50-50s, and sometimes they work out for you, sometimes they won't, sometimes you get a bit of a clattering. But in this case, they got lucky. Josh Brownhill got the goal. And I think, arguably if Burnley did get a bit more luck like that earlier on in the season, they might have done better. But then it kind of equals out with the fact that Muric is... It's so unfortunate because neither of us are goalkeepers, but you can just imagine as a human being in that position, and he's got no one else to blame apart from himself. It is one that we played back for years and years and years as like goalkeeper howlers in Premier League years, and he'll probably be up there with number one. And I mean, they do so well. I mean, to get themselves in the game, Burnley get themselves leading, but then to shoot yourself in the foot. I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say, to be honest, mate. To make it, there's nothing you can really say to justify it or make Burnley fans feel any better or Muric feel any better. But yeah, it's just try and forget it the best you can. Is that probably what he can do?
Yeah, it's just what he's just taking his eye off the ball for literally a split second. It's like it happens. We see it happens all the time on like fullbacks or wingers. Take the eye off the ball, literally trying to see where your next pass is going to be, sort of scanning, and then it just goes beyond you. Normally the outfield players get away with it. It only goes out for a throw in with a goalkeeper when you're playing out the back. It's a risk. That's why they try and say the keeper is normally positioned outside of the goalposts when they're playing out from the back, so that just in case there's sort of no risk. But yeah, just really, really unlucky, and especially because how well Muric has been playing. It's a shame because he's been a fantastic shot stopper, and then you've got Trafford on the bench, who we sort of know as a really good ball playing goalkeeper. So Trafford maybe wasn't making the saves. Muric came in. Now Muric has made a mistake with his feet. What do you do? It's difficult, and but it was just one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Muric made 8 saves in the game, so really had a hand in keeping Burnley in the game. And it's just one of those where when you're down there at the bottom, nothing seems to be going your way. And that's exactly what was going on for Sheffield United as they lost to Brentford 2-0. And now Brentford 7 points clear of the relegation zone. Sheffield United 10 points off safety. This seemed like a game where if Brentford won, they probably would be safe and beyond all doubt that they were going to get relegated. I think that's pretty fair to say, don't you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't say all doubt is gone. I still think 7 points, it should be enough, especially in terms of relegation battle. Obviously, teams are picking up less points, so 7 points is a much bigger gap than compared to 7 points in potentially like a Champions League race or something. But it's pretty much done it. I think they've obviously got Luton next week. If they get at least a point there, they are, for me, 100% safe. It's just if Luton do win that game, that gap shrinks down to 4 points between them. So they're not just out of it yet. On the other hand, Sheffield United, they're down, unfortunately. I think it's game over.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, mate. I think they've been down for probably a little while now, and if anything, they're fighting for a bit of pride. And they did it right in the game against Brentford, if we're being honest. I think they did very well to contain Brentford for large parts, but eventually it did break down and was another own goal, this time by Arblaster, the young youth player who's coming through the ranks. Chris Wilder gave him his opportunity this season. He's absolutely been taking it, but I think it's just a very unfortunate the way he kicks the ball, ends up in the back of the net, beating the goalkeeper. There's nothing much you can do about it. But then a rogue VAR shout for Damsgaard's own Damsgaard goal from a free kick, which gets ruled out for a foul on Ollie McBurney. How did you see that one? Did you think it should have been ruled out?
I'm trying to like rack my brain of what actually happened in this. I honestly can't remember. I actually can't remember. I'm really sorry, mate. Let's say that. Oh, it was the right decision. Yeah, I think it was the right decision.
Well, I tell you what, it's funny because I actually did think it was the right decision.
There we go. Good guess then.
Yeah.
A good guess from myself.
Yeah, I'm glad at this late stage of the podcast. Normally it's me having the howler and forgetting my memory. Normally something associated with Luton. I'm glad it's you this week. But yeah, I think I can't remember who it was that fouled McBurney, but I think that had they not blocked him, he would have got a decent way to blocking the shot. He would have got in the way, and I think that could have helped impact the direction of the ball. And I think it probably was on the balance fair to give it as a foul, even though he was still a considerable distance, and Ollie McBurney isn't the fastest of players, so it's a doubt whether he would have made it. But I think it was enough doubt that you go, yes, that is a VAR call to be ruled out for. And then, and finally, do we talk about the second goal for Brentford, which is Onyeka, who comes on the pitch off the bench, and just a goal from a throw-in. Very poor defending on Sheffield United's part, and I think it's one where they definitely would have, Chris Wilder would be so disappointed because of how easy it was. Yes, they're relegated, but they are still playing for pride, and I think 2-0 away to Brentford, it's just damning, and probably the last nail in the coffin for Sheffield United. And Brentford, in my opinion, I don't think what I wanted to say earlier when I said they're probably beyond all doubt not relegated. I think now what I meant is they don't have the pressure and they don't have to worry about it, which now means that they're most likely just going to play with a bit more freedom in the last few games and find themselves further up the table.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially with Sharda coming back. I think that's a real big boost for them. Start of the season, Brentford were playing really well with a front three of Sharda, Wissa and Mbeumo. And I think having him sort of back now from his injuries is a big boost because he was looking really, really exciting, really quick coming in from that left-hand side, can also play up front. And I think next season will hopefully be a key player for them again. I just wanted to say as well in this game that even though I said Sheffield United are definitely down, it's game over. I think again they played pretty well in this game, and I think a 2-0 victory for Brentford is maybe a little bit harsh on how they played because despite maybe all of the club and the players thinking they're going down as we are, they're not giving up and they are still showing really good fight, as you say, which I think is commendable given how big of a task it probably has been this season for them to try and stay up.
Yeah, well said. And I think that's all we have time for on this week's episode. Join us next week to see if Arsenal can beat Wolves, if Liverpool can beat Fulham, and if both sides can maybe gain some points on Manchester City. And we also have some big fixtures at the bottom of the table with Everton facing Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United facing Burnley, and Luton Town facing Brentford. If you want to stay up to date, give us a subscribe to us on YouTube, give us a follow on Spotify. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in the next one.